Did you know that a rare two-headed king cobra has just been discovered? Keep watching to find out more about this extremely rare creature. A farmer in India was the one who found this very rare and unique king cobra. He had never seen anything like it before. The snake was first discovered in a village in India. It is believed that the snake has two heads, each with its own brain. And you might be wondering how it's even possible for a snake to have two heads. Well, it's actually a genetic mutation. This occurs when a reptile embryo splits into two identical twins, but they don't fully separate. Instead, they remain conjoined. Although this is also common in other animals, such as turtles, it is extremely rare for it to occur in snakes. But this particular snake is not the only two-headed snake that has ever been discovered. There are some other recorded cases of two-headed snakes, but most of them didn't survive for very long. This is because when the two heads pull in opposite directions, it makes it extremely difficult for the snake to move around. So most of these snakes end up dying very soon after birth. And although the odds of finding a two-headed king cobra are extremely low, there have been several recorded cases of it happening. In 2011, a similar case was recorded in the same region where this latest discovery took place. A 13-foot-long two-headed king cobra was found by a man named Wazir Khan. The snake had two heads and two tails, but only 3 legs. After this discovery, many people were afraid to leave their homes. They were scared that they would come across this extremely dangerous creature. The two heads of the snake could independently smell, taste and see what was around them. Since there were two brains controlling the snake, it meant that it had double the amount of venom that it normally would. And since it had two heads, it also had two separate mouths. So if someone was bitten by both of the heads, then they would need at least 4 antivenom injections. This time, when the rare two-headed king cobra was discovered, it was found by a man named Shipram. He was the one who alerted the local wildlife officials. After hearing about this incredible discovery, they quickly went over to his house to collect the snake. When they arrived at his home, they were shocked to see the snake slithering around with 2 distinct heads. Each head was alert and active, and they seemed to be able to control the rest of the snake's body very well. This two-headed snake was around 7 feet long, which is quite impressive considering how rare these snakes are. After they collected the snake, they took it to a nearby veterinary hospital. At the hospital, the doctors examined the snake and tried to understand how it was able to survive. They carried out an endoscopy on the snake, which allowed them to take a look inside its body. As they went further into the snake, they noticed that there was only one stomach. So even though the snake had 2 heads, it only had one digestive system. At first, the experts thought that maybe the 2 heads were attached to different parts of the digestive system. However, after doing the endoscopy, they realized that both of the heads were attached to the same stomach. The reason why this is important is because the way that a snake digests its food is by squeezing its stomach muscles. However, if 2 heads are trying to control the same body, then this can make it extremely difficult to do so. Even though we don't know exactly how this snake managed to survive, it's safe to say that it probably didn't eat very much. In the wild, king cobras usually eat rodents and other small animals. However, because of the way that this snake was built, it probably couldn't eat large prey. And if it couldn't eat large prey, then it probably wouldn't be able to get enough nutrients to keep it alive. After spending a few days at the veterinary hospital, the two-headed king cobra was released back into the wild. This is because it was believed that if it was kept in captivity, it wouldn't be able to get the exercise that it needed. In the wild, snakes are constantly moving around. They need to slither over rocks and logs, and they also need to move through tall grass. However, if a snake is kept in captivity, it doesn't get to do any of these things. It spends most of its time either in a tank or being handled by humans. And this is why it was decided that the best thing for this snake would be to release it back into the wild. Before they let go of the snake, the doctors gave it a tracking device. This will allow the wildlife officials to track the snake and see how it behaves in the wild. Now, when the snake was first found, many people were afraid that it would attack humans. However, after the doctors examined it, they realized that it was actually quite tame. It didn't seem to be aggressive at all, so it was believed that if it was released back into the wild, it would be able to survive. Now, even though this snake is extremely rare, it's not the only one of its kind. In fact, there have been many cases of two-headed snakes being found all over the world. In 2018, a two-headed corn snake was born at a zoo in England, and in 2019, a two-headed garter snake was found in California. There's still a lot that we don't know about two-headed snakes, but scientists are constantly learning more about them. One of the things that scientists are most interested in is how these snakes are able to survive. As we mentioned earlier, it's not very easy for a snake to have 2 heads. It can make it difficult to eat, and it also makes it hard to move around. However, some two-headed snakes are able to live for many years. So there must be something that allows them to survive. Scientists are also interested in studying two-headed snakes because it can help us learn more about how genetic mutations occur. By studying these mutations, we can learn more about how all living things work. I know that some of you guys might be worried about the snake now that it has been released back into the wild. However, I'm sure that it'll be fine. Remember that this type of snake is extremely rare, and it's not very likely that it will come across another human. If it does come across another human, I'm sure that the person will be more scared than the snake. Now that this amazing discovery has been made, it's likely that more people will go out and try to find a two-headed snake. However, this is very unlikely to happen. Just think about how many snakes there are in the world, and yet we've only ever found a handful of two-headed snakes. It's safe to say that it will be a very long time until we find another two-headed king cobra. Now, even though this snake was extremely rare, there are plenty of other amazing snakes out there. If you want to see a video about the world's largest snake, then stay tuned. We'll make sure to put it up on the screen for you. But now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Comment below. What do you think of this extremely rare two-headed king cobra? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Now don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. With that said, it's time to move on to our next video. Hi, this is your host, and today we ask, where did you originate from? This is a two-headed king cobra. It's a rare genetic mutation resulting in a single snake having two heads. But where do they come from? To answer that question, we have to do some traveling. Our first stop takes us to India, where these two men are about to get up close and personal with a two-headed Indian cobra. They aren't concerned at all because it's captive bred. That's right, this one was actually bred in captivity. When you do that, you can control its diet and ensure that both of its heads receive food. A wild two-headed snake wouldn't be so lucky. But why does this happen? For that, we head to Africa. Here, we see an eastern brown snake, and this one has two heads. In fact, this species of snake is known for being extremely venomous, as well as occasionally having two heads. So there must be something about this habitat that makes it more likely to occur. This is a savanna in South Africa. Eastern brown snakes live here, and it's also where our next two-headed snake lives. This is a boomslang, and it has two heads. And to make things even stranger, it's also green. Most snakes in this area are green, but they're usually only one head at a time. So what's going on here? It all comes down to genetics. The gene that determines color is separate from the gene that determines number of heads, and when both parents carry a recessive gene for two heads, the offspring will also have two heads. It's totally random which genes get passed on. Sometimes two recessive genes will combine to produce a two-headed snake. It's not dependent on environmental factors like where they live or what they eat. So if this is a random genetic mutation, does that mean it can happen to any species of snake? Well, it's most common in cobras, but it can happen in many others. Like this king cobra, you've seen it twice already. But now you'll see it for a third time. Here it is again. When this guy hatched, he had two heads. His name is Uni because he's unique. But how unique? There are hundreds of thousands of snakes in zoos and private collections around the world. And according to the reptile database, as of March 2023, there are 98 publicly known two-headed snakes. And here's the thing, two-headed snakes don't just hatch once in a while. People are actively looking for them and breeding them. In 2020, two twin-headed king cobras were born at the Slimbach Reptile Park in Germany. And the park's owner said it wasn't anything special. They were just 2 of 40 baby king cobras hatched during the breeding season. The same thing happened at a reptile park in North Carolina. 2 of the baby snakes had 2 heads. King cobras are popular among snake enthusiasts, and it seems like they're more likely to have 2 heads than other species. In fact, in 2021, a double-headed king cobra was born in Thailand. We'll tell you about it after. In Thailand, people believe that snakes with multiple heads are good luck. You might remember the movie starring an ancient Thai king who believed his son was cursed by a witch to have 2 heads. In reality, the king's son had dipicus, a condition where the lower half of the body duplicates. The duplicate contains another set of legs and sometimes another tail. It's a real medical condition, but it's not related to snake biology. We're going back to snakes. Specifically this guy, he has 2 heads, but he also has 4 legs. Now he's got a really cool name, but it's not because he's so special. Scientists didn't even know what to call this condition, so they named it after King Triton. Most snakes don't have legs at all, but this is normal for certain species. It's also pretty easy to tell where he came from. See, he was found in the jungles of Borneo. This is where his kind live. This is a type of pit viper. They're typically small, less than 3 feet long, and they're incredibly shy. And it seems like they're also incredibly rare, because this is the only known example of a 2-headed snake with 4 legs. Of course, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened before. It just means we haven't found one yet. What's the smallest snake that can have 2 heads? To find out, we'll need to go to the United Kingdom. At the London Zoo, a corn snake gave birth to a tiny 2-headed snake. Corn snakes are usually bred for their beautiful colors and patterns, and this one is no exception. And yes, it does eat mice, but it doesn't hunt. Because there are 2 heads, they take turns biting and swallowing the prey. If they don't, the other head will start biting and swallowing the mouse itself. So they've evolved to work together. Here they are, outside of their enclosure. These two little guys are getting some much-needed exercise, and let's just say they're very eager to please. Look how excited they get over a simple head scratch. As we've seen, two-headed snakes are relatively common, but they're still fairly unusual. So what's the rarest thing about two-headed snakes? It's hard to say because it depends on what you're talking about. Do you want to see a two-headed snake with 6 legs? Probably not. And that's the thing about nature. Even though we think we understand it pretty well, there's always something that will surprise us. In this case, a 5-headed snake. We don't know exactly where it came from or how it got so many heads, but it was definitely worth sharing. After all, it's not every day that you see a snake with 5 heads. Imagine what it would look like if this one had 6. One would probably stick out. This is a carpet python, and it has 2 heads, but it also has an extra eye. It's just a small bump on the back of its head, but it acts and looks like a third eye. This is a very rare genetic mutation. Snakes don't evolve new features very quickly, but sometimes it happens. In 2017, a 3-headed snake was born in Florida. People thought it was a mutant, but scientists said it was just a baby snake with a genetic mutation. Mutations aren't always bad. Sometimes they can be beneficial. In this case, it meant that this guy could see in almost every direction. This made him a better hunter. But did he survive? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it. 3-headed snakes are super rare. It's hard to imagine because most snakes are only 1 head at a time. And a 3-headed snake would be even harder to get along with. And when it comes to mating, well, forget about it. There are tons of problems that can arise during the mating process, especially when there are 3 heads involved. So it's understandable why 3-headed snakes are so rare. Maybe someday we'll see one. If you want to increase your chances, the best place to go is Indonesia. On the island of Java, there are a lot of different kinds of snakes, including this guy. He's a reticulated python and he has 2 heads. These 2 heads have a little bit of a rivalry going on. They often fight each other over food. Luckily, this python lives in a zoo and the staff makes sure both heads get fed. These 2 heads have a special name. They're called chimera. Now that's not very original. If you've ever played God of War, you'll remember fighting the chimera. Well, this guy isn't as dangerous, but he's just as cool to look at. Let's just hope those 2 heads don't start fighting over who gets to bite first. It's usually the one in the front. Remember the guy with 4 legs? Well, we found his sister. She's also a 4-legged snake, but she's a little bigger now. Both of her heads seem to get along great. Sometimes they look in different directions, but mostly they look in the same direction. You can see why this is such a rare snake. Nature loves to experiment, but it doesn't keep track of its results. This means that we may never know how many of these 4-legged snakes have lived or died. But this one is safe because it's at a reptile park in Arizona. Here you can see it slithering along a branch. And yes, snakes can climb. This is a rare sight, but it's definitely possible. We've come to the end of our journey. We've seen a bunch of 2-headed snakes and learned that it's a relatively common genetic mutation. Some of these snakes are lucky enough to be raised in captivity, while others live in the wild and hunt for food. And who knows what other kinds of snakes are out there. There are millions of them, and they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. We've only scratched the surface, but hopefully we've given you a glimpse into the amazing world of snakes.